All right, so I watched the last episodes 9 and 10 late, but even though I watched them late, I was like, yo, I was tired. I think I was tired, and that's why I didn't watch them the day of. So I didn't watch any social media, anything like that. But I thought it was interesting, the whole Reggie Miller thing, especially since he went off in a couple of games, right? And then for them to kind of just go down 7 games, and that stat that the Bulls have only gone to 7 games in a series was pretty serious. I think that's a significant thing. It says something about the team. But one thing that I really did take, because I think he did give them props for being good, is uh, Jordan really has an issue with anyone winning anything if he is quote unquote in the competition. Like he, I mean, I guess that's a part of his drive, but also it's weird because, for instance, he said the Karl Malone thing was a motivation for him to get his ring, which I get it. That's the prize you really want, and but it was interesting because I look at that and it's like, well, did Karl Malone have a better season? I don't know because I haven't looked at the stats, but I mean, first of all, we already know that voters get fatigued from voting in MVPs and stuff like that. So it's but so many times you can win it in a row before people are like, are other people really good? This is normal for them. So is it really an MVP level anymore? And while it's unfair to the person who's performing well, it does get, allow itself sort of to lend itself to other people maybe catching the spotlight a little bit and raising the bar for who they are, right? And I thought that was, a thing that mattered. And the funny thing was that I thought then he found another reason. So he had the Karl Malone thing he was mad about. Then he had the Brian or Byron Russell. I'm not sure what his name is because they said it two different ways. I think it was obviously for insult or a joke. Like Stockton said, Ryan Russell was a rookie and he was joking, but Mike took it serious, and then he told Carl and John, yo, you need to get him. So it's crazy because he really really takes little tiny things and he's just like on a level of I guess petty that is really crazy. I think and it was good to hear Michael say it too. The whole food poisoning game thing. It was interesting that there's only one pizza shop in Salt Lake City, Utah, right? To feed an NBA team, and that the NBA team room service was closed as well for an NBA team. That's weird. And then 5 dudes deliver it. Now, at first it sounds suspicious. Then you think about, yo, I'm delivering to Michael Jordan. People are probably like, hey, can I come with you? Yada yada yada. So I guess all of that depends. But yeah, I mean, obviously, maybe they did something to the food and he got sick. And so some people can say, well, it's good that only he ate it because then it wouldn't affect the other people. But then you think, well, if other people had eaten it, I wonder what happens to the series, right? And so I just thought that was an interesting thing. Even though I did look at social media and people are like, oh, nah, he's lying. He was hungover or whatever from the night before, yada, yada, yada. I mean, I guess it is what it is. But one thing I really, really did see is something about parents in episode 9. Michael Jordan's mom, she's a super solid lady. She seems like a really nice lady. She's probably tough, but I mean, she seems like a really, really nice lady. She kind of keeps him balanced. And Steve Kerr's dad, it was really trash what happened to his dad. And but now you look at modern day Steve Kerr, and you can see where him being aware of social issues on the sort of political spectrum, it matters, and it gives him a lot of credit and credence for what he does. I give Steve Kerr's mom a lot of credit too because that I can only imagine to hear that your husband got shot in the head. That's wow, right? And but he was well known and liked among the people. And so that's kind of what I got from there. Uh, in in episode 10, I thought something that was interesting was just sort of starting in random places that Phil Jackson was offered to come back, and he said, well, I think it would be disrespectful to Jerry for me to come back, which to me I took as code as I don't like that guy, and so I'm going to just leave. You know what? I have better things, because he probably had the Lakers thing lined up. If not solidly, he was definitely in talks, because I looked at the list and they had like 3 coaches the year before Phil Jackson came. Um, And so I thought that was a really, really significant thing. I think one of the big things was when the Bulls blew out the Jazz, and yet every other game was close. It said something about sort of the drive of those guys, even though they were tired. There was a drive, but the one that obviously many people have commented on this is the Dennis Rodman wrestling and skipping practice thing. I thought that was freaking hilarious, man. So he's out there wrestling, beating people with chairs. That was a very interesting era because apparently, I guess Karl Malone was out there wrestling as well too. And you look at those guys next to those wrestlers, and one, those wrestlers are pretty damn big, but two, I mean, those guys are big themselves. They're huge, man. They're giants. And with that, it sort of slides in the thing that Carmen Electra, still just like wow. I guess Prince really knew what was going on, right? The purple one. And another thing I saw that Scotty was really really big in the whole process, man. And so his decision to even play and his decision making period is really being honest what was the foundational engine of the team. He was the calm. Jordan was the overdrive and the face. He was the glittery paint. But Scotty and Phil, they were like the chugging parts that no one really pays attention to. And I think about that. I look at the in that second three-peat where they had issues where they were worried about scoring and Mike had to score so much. I think they mentioned this earlier, but if Horace Grant was a part of the team, I think they actually have an easier time in that second three-peat. Hell, I would even say if Horace Grant was, I mean, he was there when they that first year and they made a decent run and then he was gone and they were bad. I think if he was there that second year as well, that year Jordan came back, I think they make a run and maybe they win the title. I don't know, but I think they make a run if Horace is on that team because he could score and he was everything that Dennis Rodman was. So I thought that was a really really big deal. I mean, obviously one of the big things was changing subjects was the shot, right? I mean, what a way to end your career to go out with a bang. And so obviously the question was it a push off? And you're like, well, his momentum is going that way. And my take is he helped him go even further than where he was going. During that time, I don't think you call that foul. Even if the referee saw it, I don't think they call it. In today's NBA, I think they do call it because you would see it as an offensive foul because the offensive player got an advantage. But I mean, and then you think about it, it's a superstar call, so even today maybe it doesn't get called, right? And so wrapping up, I think one thing because I think Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner, really got a pass on a lot of stuff, and especially Mike had the media behind him. I think Jerry said all the right things behind him. Jerry gave him a lot of passes, I think, because of the baseball thing and still paying him wild when his dad died and all that stuff, and just letting him kind of go and come. But you saw when Mike saw the reason why Jerry let it happen, and he gave his reason, and it was. I mean, I'm being honest. I mean, it was politically correct, and Jerry Krause isn't alive to defend himself, so it was kind of a garbage answer, so to speak. And you could see that Mike saw it was a garbage answer too, because he definitely had the eye roll, like, come on, man, that's the reason. And Mike was very specific. He said, okay, if you told me I get 1 year to come back for a 7, would I come? Yeah. If you tell Phil, yeah. And he's like, okay, the only one might be Scotty. And even Scotty, if you tell Scotty he has a chance to win 7, would he come back? And he's like, definitely, yeah, because Scotty got traded that season, so he was still under contract. And so I don't know. I don't know if that people. A lot of people say that they should have scored. They could have won 8 or 10. I disagree with that. I think fatigue, and I think his breaks were very well timed. They were good for his career. They obviously the universe led him to those, and it led him to be the most lauded and accoladed person. Obviously, he doesn't have the most awards, but the accolades and just the projection of who he is in society is huge, right? So to end it all, like even though it was the last dance about then in the team, obviously a Michael Jordan story, and that's where it kind of takes away from the documentary part, official, because he had control. But Those who know me know I believe there's no such thing as a GOAT. There's no greatest of all time unless that thing ends, period, right? But I saw an interview before I actually got on here, and Michael Jordan said that, maybe he's being PC, but he said, I wouldn't want to be called the GOAT, and I wouldn't call myself that. I think is more specifically what he said, because I couldn't play the guys before me, and he didn't say anything about the players after him. But I'm saying he also don't play the guys after him, and so you have to give credence that if we believe in human evolution, which is in our face every day, the person in the group of people who watch you get better, right? They have your same physical abilities, but then they have what you already have in your mind, and they take the skill set further. So I believe there's no GOAT, but I did enjoy the 10-part series. I guess it's cool they moved it up, and I definitely think you should watch it. Now, uh, I don't know, if it moved the needle for other people, but I did enjoy watching it, and I enjoyed it, and I do hope they do another one. So with that was my last take on The Last Dance, and I'm definitely probably gonna watch it all again, maybe all together, 10 hours one day in quarantine time, to be like, oh, and maybe I'll see some more stuff. But with that, I'm gonna say I'm gone, and I look forward to hearing from you in some kind of way in the future. Later. So, The Last Dance, episodes 7 and 8. I'm absolutely loving it, man. I know they like to show the backstabbing thing, and that one was really, really interesting to start. Where they got Jerry there. He's the bad guy. He's the dude from Space Jam or whatever. But yeah, the backstabbing part. I'm sure there was some stuff going on, I guess, behind closed doors, which would be considered backstabbing. And so we just have to be honest about that and see what's there. As I sit here and have Inglorious Bastards going on in the background. But I know starting out with the first three-peat, just the thought behind that, man, just to I think there's only two other teams other than the Bulls to three-peat. And so I know specifically Jordan said the reason that he wanted to come back was that Magic and Bird hadn't done a three-peat. They had won multiple rings, but they had never won three titles in a row. So he wanted to do something that was different than what they did, and I think that was pretty cool. I mean, because the fact that he said he would quit, or he was planning to quit that summer that he was playing with the Dream Team, but that Magic Bird thing was driving him. So to just do something they hadn't done, and I think that's really interesting. Especially since I still ask myself, when did they crown this guy the greatest ever, right? And at that press conference when he retired, the first time they said that he was the greatest player to play team sports, and so I guess they crowned him then with only three rings, and so I just find that to be interesting. Point being made, I think there's no such thing as a GOAT, quote unquote, because time hasn't ended, and the acronym means greatest of all time. Well, time hasn't ended, and more people will come. So that means that people learn from the person that came before them. Like, obviously, Jordan learned from other people, and he was pushed by other people by watching them. So that's how you can say that someone will follow and probably be a big deal. The interesting thing about the whole retirement thing is, even though a lot of people looked at it and they were like, wow, well, what's going on, yada, yada, yada. And I know, that's part of the kind of thing that happened because of, the suspicion of an investigation because of gambling. But it did actually, whether the league wanted it or not, it gave the league an opportunity to figure out what is its post-Michael Jordan mentality. And so I think with that going on, I think when Scotty obviously picked up the reins and they were pretty good, it gave the league something. So when he retired that second time, it helped them kind of understand what direction to go in, and it allowed them to think about how they could produce and push those new stars. But the thing that really got me, man, I found it, to be an interesting thing, is like just with his dad dying. Imagine being blamed for one of or your parents' death. It's crazy. And I mean, obviously, just imagine social media back then where, you had the secret suspension, gambling debts, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this guy was super rich back then. So unless he owed somebody $1 billion, like he could pay any debt that was there. So that was really, really interesting dealing with that. Him being in baseball, and a lot of people, I think the reason that Jerry Reinsdorf gets off, the owner of the Bulls, and Jerry Krause gets the brunt of the blame is because, one, Jerry Reinsdorf continued to pay Michael Jordan while he was away, so he still got his basketball salary while he's playing baseball. And I guess he got a baseball salary too, since he had to be on their payroll in some way. And but since he owned the White Sox, just to automatically put the guy in Double-A ball and let him play Double-A baseball. And he explained, like it's not natural for people just to go straight to Double-A ball. And that was interesting because, I mean, he was just an okay player. I mean, he had good numbers. I mean, obviously, I think people really like Michael Jordan, who the people who are around him, so they could only see him succeeding and things that he does, even though obviously there's evidence of him being, if not, I don't want to use the word mediocre with him because I don't think he's a mediocre person, but just the outcomes may have been mediocre, But I think it was good. I mean, I think he used baseball to clear his mind, and I think the thing that really that got me the most was, just sort of a question I want to know is, after a bad team result, you saw a lot of video and people talking about it where Michael Jordan would jump on those guys. And I do question, like, when did he take the blame or acknowledge his role in the end result? Because I see a lot of finger pointing, but and I know he was a really good player, the best player on his team. But I saw him a lot of blaming other people, and I'm like, yo, if you're the leader, at some point, some of the blame should fall on you, right? So, say, oh, well, you need to practice harder. But what about you, dude? Like, I mean, unless you shot 20 for 20 and, you had 0 turnovers and every time you passed the ball, it was a perfect pass, you got something to play in that too, right? And so the reason I mention that is because his means of motivation is just really interesting to me. Like this whole tough love, I'm a bully and fight people, it is what it is. But I mean, at the same time, if you think everyone is like you, then I think you're misguided, because that means that, everyone should have the same results as you, doing the same thing as you. And we know that's untrue. It was very resounding to me, specifically when it said, the first season without Michael Jordan, the team enjoyed it. Obviously, they played really well. They said Phil Jackson did his best coaching job. And, like, the only reason that the team wasn't that great the season after that second season without him, is because they let Horace Grant go. But the team was still good, And so the fact that they said they enjoyed it and they still had pretty good performance, I think that was a big deal. Now, the Scottie Pippen thing was huge because, I mean, I kind of get Scottie's thing, because you're like, well, okay, I'm the guy, I'm the leader of the team, but you're drawing up a play for this rookie, because Kukoc was a rookie at the time. And even though Kukoc was like, yo, I hit a bunch of shots, but, you're like, I'm Scottie, I'm the leader, right? Would you do? And I think in his mind, he's like, would you have done this to Michael? And I think the answer is no. Absolutely, they wouldn't have done that to Michael. Even though, in basketball, and you hear commentators say it when you watch the basketball games, the most dangerous person is the inbounder, but it was like 1.6 seconds, so obviously that's not it. But, I mean, I give credit to Kukoc for hitting the shot, and, I'm sure it gave him, helped him drop his pair, right? And in that year, just for me, just looking at it, man, the Knicks went to the finals that year, obviously, to lose to Hakeem, the Dream, Olajuwon. And it sucked, but, obviously the Knicks showed that they had the potential to be there. And another thing I got from that first episode, episode 7, is that he really hates the Pistons, man. You saw he got emotional. But in my opinion, he needed the Pistons to beat him up to achieve what he achieved. And maybe that's why he had the mentality to treat everybody else like that. But, I mean, the Pistons kind of did it in malice, if you think about it. So if you knew somebody did something to you in malice and that motivated you to behave the same way, but you're doing it out of love, quote unquote, I think that's really misguided and empty of leadership. I just think that's sort of I guess, memorization or something. I disagree with that. But the reason I think that it really affected him is because you could see the pain of fractured relationships as a cost to him wanting to achieve goals he wanted that he named team goals. I mean, obviously they were team goals, but these were goals he wanted. And so you could see where the pain and fractured relationships that came from that bothered him a little bit. Now, going into episode 8, that Bulls Hornets thing was kind of interesting because, I mean, BJ hooped, man. He was hooping. And I think, Michael obviously got in his head after that Game 2 performance where BJ played well because I think Mike got in his feelings a little bit. So you're not supposed to celebrate, after you win and you did an unexpected thing, especially since the narrative before that was the Bulls were just going to wipe the Hornets up and sweep them. And so when they won significantly in Chicago, I think that matters a lot. But I think, obviously Michael is one at fabricating his own enemies, right? So like the LeBradford Smith, it made me laugh and joke a little bit of saying, is the reason the whole LeBron hate there is because, of the LeBradford Smith, right? Because, I mean, he hooped on the guy didn't say anything. Mike lied and said, yeah, he said good game to him. And then Mike came back was like, oh, I lied. I'm like, come on, man. I think it's funny in one hand, but then it's also, it's I don't know, maybe a little sadistic. But, again, he's one of the greatest basketball players to ever play the game. So, I mean, I'll let him be who he is, right? Now, I will give Michael a lot of credit when they talk about him coming back from that second year when baseball was on strike, and Mike said, I refuse to be a replacement baseball player. Because, I mean, this actually could have been his chance if he truly wanted to play baseball. It could have been his chance to play pro ball because he could have been up there, showed his performance, and be like, yo, keep me. And his name, and he had enough clout where he could have been like, all right, this is who I am. And he would have been on the White Sox, I think. And so, in my opinion, the Major League Baseball strike led to the quote-unquote I'm back moment. And I thought that was cool, minus the 55 points he dropped on the Knicks in the Gardens. Michael Jordan can kick rocks for that because, whatever, stop playing well against the Knicks. But just knowing, again, that they acknowledged that the Bulls were significantly weaker because Horace Grant was gone, right? And so they didn't have anyone, that defensive rebounding presence. And Horace could score, that was gone. And so that was really a big deal. I mean, now the legitimate thing I think that was a motivation for Michael was when I think they said Nick Anderson said that 45 isn't 23 when he in the post game when they stole the ball from him and when he threw the ball away. Obviously he had his errors and mistakes, but that's a huge deal, man, because then he brought back 23 the next game and he went off, man. And I give him credit. So I mean, while he wasn't in the tip top basketball, mental and physical condition, obviously he still could play the game because he was still good. The team chemistry wasn't there. I think that Dennis Rodman missing was a bigger thing, or that defensive rebounding presence that Horace was a significant issue. I thought it was cool that, for Space Jam basically was a movie about him practicing. If we're going to be honest, right? He was out there, he was practicing ball, and Space Jam was the thing that helped lead him back to playing basketball, especially since he now had a real, not a fake LeBradford thing, not a fake B.J. Armstrong is excited because he won a game thing. But, the Orlando beat them to 45 is not 23 is important. So, I mean, the Bulls were monsters that year, 72-10. And the humility behind that of, it don't mean a thing without the ring, which is what they used against the Golden State Warriors, obviously, who lost in 7 games in that season where the Warriors went 73-9. And it was huge. But, they came back. They went 72-10. They wiped up everybody in the playoffs. They got to the Seattle Supersonics. Everybody thought they would wipe them. I love how Jordan laughed at Gary Payton saying, hey, he got in his head. Even though, obviously, it was a thing there, where Gary maybe did get in his head. And Michael got in his own head as well because obviously dealing with his dad, his death, and his dad not being there when he has reached the pinnacle to celebrate with him. So, those tears that he had on Father's Day, man, those were real, man. I mean, they're real, his dad wasn't there to celebrate with him, and he had like genuine pain, and a part of him was empty in that one. So I thought the ending of it was really, really cool too, because, obviously they're talking about that final season, that last dance season going into episodes 9 and 10, where Reggie Miller, I mean, the Pacers, the Knicks, they were good, right? And their goal was, hey, man, we're gonna we're going to retire Michael Jordan. And I love how that's how it ended the episode. And it moved it to the, like, the crescendo of, like, boom, boom, boom. This is what's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to seeing episode 9 and 10. I just enjoyed the sports aspect, the basketball aspect, the news aspect of it all. And, I think it'll be something that'll be really, really fun to think about and talk about and discuss about. And I do think that this, for some people, this is going to push them further into the whole debate about the fact that Michael Jordan is the top of the basketball pinnacle. And I don't knock them for it. I mean, obviously, he's a great player. So, with that, I'm looking forward to 9 and 10. And, then hopefully sports will be back on, right? All right. So, I just knocked out episodes 5 and 6 of The Last Dance. I love basketball. I'm just being so very honest. I love basketball. I love sports, but I love the camaraderie and how sports in general is kind of a moment where people can be superheroes. They can be comic book characters. They can escape real life. I understand why it's so addictive. Even if you're not good, even if you're not like top level NBA, NFL, EPL, La Liga, etc., it's a really big deal because it lets you escape reality, and there's nothing like having fans. Like my reoccurring theme is attention, right? I really believe that people want attention, and attention is what drives us. I mean, we would take attention over food in many cases, but attention with food, oh my God. Best thing ever. But episode 5 and 6, definitely serious. To start off episode 5, seeing Kobe, man, that was so real, man. It was really real. I mean, you obviously see, the old heads talking about a up-and-coming guy, not necessarily knowing where he's going, but having that feeling like, yo, he might be headed somewhere is pretty serious, And my thing is the Clyde Drexler competition. That was absolutely non-existent. I mean, I guess I don't know enough where maybe people were comparing Clyde Drexler and Michael Jordan to each other. I mean, I know they both played two guards, and Clyde Drexler could dunk, and he was a pretty high flyer too. I think he was five slammer jammer. I don't know, but I know he could dunk and he could get up there, but. I kind of get Mike's attitude about the disrespect. He's like, yo, this dude is not even me. So when he went off in them playoffs, it was what it was. I mean, Michael has clearly said that, for him, the littlest thing can be competition and motivation, which I'll allude to that a little bit later as well, because I think that's sort of an issue for him, right? They moved to the Dream Team with no Zeke, right? And, Mike was like, yo, he didn't ask for him not to be on there. He was clearly emotional. You could see he was bothered by that. I don't know if he was bothered by the fact that he gets the blame for it, or if he was bothered by the fact that, what caused people to insinuate he did that. I mean, he clearly was emotional about the whole Bad Boys Pistons thing, so he might have had some anger there, right? I remember seeing something on YouTube about the practice of the Dream Team and how it was like the greatest basketball game never seen, and I didn't watch it because I don't know, I think it's on YouTube, but I haven't watched it. But I believe him. I mean, it was 12 of the best players in the world. Now I will say this because I've been hearing debates about Isaiah Thomas and John Stockton. Isaiah Thomas, at that point in his career, had won an MVP and won 2 NBA championships. There's no way John Stockton was better than him. People can say, well, John Stockton is the all-time assist leader and steals leader. Yeah, but that's John Stockton continuing to play years and years past Isaiah Thomas. At that very moment, Isaiah Thomas had 2 rings and an MVP. John Stockton was not even in his class. Now, John Stockton is a top-tier player, definite Hall of Famer, but let's stop that. We're looking at it from today, or people are looking at it from today. We go back to that year, that time. Isaiah Thomas was an MVP and a champion, so we got to stop that. And I think I was seeing somewhere else where they said Joe Dumars was the alternative behind John Stockton. So we can already go ahead and understand that it was just hating on Zeke, right? Even though that's a funny name, Zeke. I mean, I actually don't know how you spell it. Is it Zeke or Zeek? But whatever. Moving on. I thought the Tony Kukoc part was so great because they went in on Tony Kukoc like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen's vitriol and disdain for those guys was at the highest level, man. Like they really didn't like Jerry, and so especially since I guess the rumor was that Kukoc was going to be the future of the Bulls, and Kraus was planning for the future, which makes sense because the guy clearly had done well building the team, right? And so, an issue that they also mentioned was like paying Kukoc before they paid Scottie Pippen. I think Charles Barkley said that. It's like, hey, you can't pay Tony Kukoc or whatever because they said his name wrong before you pay Scottie Pippen. And so it was a lot of managerial crazy stuff going on with that. But I mean, I'm glad that Tony came back and hooped at the end. I mean, they still got blown out, but I mean, he hooped at the end. Clearly, he came back and he did well with the Bulls. But it was rough. But I give Tony Kukoc a lot of respect. I mean, a lot of people do this. This is sort of that white man can't jump Billy Ho thing. Where we assume if a dude is white or he don't look like a basketball player, then he's not a good basketball player. And they clearly put out there that Tony Kukoc was living in Europe, in Yugoslavia, right after the Yugoslavian War, which was pretty deadly, turned into, I think, 5 countries. It created 5 separate countries, and it was pretty serious, People don't understand the magnitude of the things that have happened in Slavic nations in Eastern Europe and the issues that they've had there. So, they think, oh, well, we had a hard life. Nah, bruh, Eastern Europe is pretty bad too. And I don't mean bad like in negative, but they've had a difficult go of it as well, especially since, sort of the communist bloc and all that stuff going on. The other really interesting thing was the Reebok logo thing. Is when they recorded Jordan in the car talking about, I'm going to show him. And he kept the American flag on him to hide the Reebok logo because he was loyal to Nike. But it was funny. I think they showed the image, and all of the guys who were represented by Nike covered their Reebok logo as well. So, Michael was able to sort of bring the guys together. But if I was Reebok, I could understand being pissed about that as well because, nobody told you can't wear your sneakers, but these uniforms, yeah. Because, then they could make the case, well, the Bulls uniforms were made by Champion. I think all the NBA logos were by Champion at the time. So why don't you cover the Champion logo when you do it, right? So Reebok had a legitimate qualm, but, I guess they followed that with the Allen Iverson sneaker later, so they're good. And the Shaq sneaker. But at this point, man, yeah, really, I give Michael Jordan credit. David Stern especially as well. These Olympics really globalized NBA basketball throughout the world. It made it a really big deal. And think about it. They blew out everybody, but it made the sport more popular. So it was non-competition for them, but it made the whole thing more popular, and it was amazing. But this is what solidified Michael Jordan as sort of that icon. And the fact is, I think people were talking about, this is after his second title, I think, and people were talking about him being the greatest. Now think about it. This is before it was even the undefeated 6 rings stuff, and they were talking about he's the greatest basketball player, which is kind of crazy. I think that's a creature of the moment, especially since it was a really, really specific thing. And like basketball had clearly many years before and will have many years after. And for him to be the greatest at that moment, I think that he was the greatest for expanding the brand for sure. I saw him talk about the manicured image where he stayed away from politics. But, the fact that I lived in Charlotte for a while and Michael Jordan went to the University of North Carolina, lived in North Carolina for a while. And when he chose to not endorse Harvey Gantt against Jesse Helms, who was out and out racist and unapologetically racist, he's passed away since. Was really interesting because the thing about it was he said, well, I was joking when I said Republicans buy sneakers too. and I made a monetary contribution. Yeah, but see, the thing about it that people miss about things like that is that I know Jordan was manicuring his image and he didn't want to come off as a Democrat or a Republican. But I think the interesting part about that is that if he had shown his face, if he had said words, it had a greater resonation more than a check. And this is where and he knows that. I mean, he was a brand ambassador of many things. He made billions of dollars off of his likeness, so he knew how much that would have been worth to the guy, and he didn't give it to him. And I think that really kind of matters. But he was honest about himself, and he said, you know what? When people try to compare what Muhammad Ali did to what he did, and saying, hey, Muhammad Ali, that's the social issue guy. I'm a basketball player, and while it wasn't the same thing as Charles Barkley saying he's not a role model, it was basically the same thing. And the thing about it is that I don't know if he still feels that way. I mean, clearly feels a little different because he has addressed some societal issues, but I think he still doesn't want to be necessarily a role model. Then episode 6, man, the cost of fame, man, the human cost of fame. Ooh, man. I mean, they dropped that Jordan Rules book where they were just letting all dirt out. So it was basically he hit that pinnacle, and he was a global brand, and people was like, got to bring him down. And so he had a lot. He clearly had skeletons in his closet. He had the Jordan Rules book, the gambling. And he said he had a competitive problem, but it's funny because ain't that gambling? Like I feel like that's the same thing. I had to say ain't for that, right? Early in the episode, I'm a Knicks fan, so it was emotional for me because the Knicks they were like this close. If you could see my hands, you would see the smallness of the space, but they were this close, man. And because clearly the Knicks went to the finals the year Jordan went there, so they were really that close. And Pat Riley clearly is a winner because he won with Shaq and he went down to Miami and won. So he would have won with the Knicks. I think he would have won a title with the Knicks because I think they could have beat one of those teams that they were playing. So for me, that was a little emotional. And it was interesting. A quote that they said when they talked about the Jordan Rules book and the gambling was, Jordan didn't violate any rules, but he violated people's expectations, by Dick Schaap, right? And that was a very interesting quote because that's the world we live in now. You don't have to break rules. If you break an expectation, it might be worse than breaking a rule, which kind of sucks, man. And especially since, I didn't know this, but he skipped a White House visit to go gamble. He was like, yo, we won a title. I don't feel like going to the White House. I'm going to go gamble with this dude because, yeah, this is more interesting. Like, that's crazy. Imagine if Michael Jordan or some NBA player did that today, right? It would just, wow. I don't feel like going to the White House. I'm going to go gamble. Crazy, right? Just to skip the White House visit. It was completely apolitical. It was selfish, right? And then so when he said he had a competition problem, like he has so much money, and he has so much money. Like clearly he could afford to gamble, but man, like when he was talking about he wanted John Paxson's money and he wanted the high rollers money too. That's crazy. Like he just wanted everything. He's like a Marvel bad guy like Dr. Doom. Maybe in Space Jam, Michael Jordan should have been the bad guy, not the good guy, right? Especially like with that pre-finals interview where he had the dark glasses on. It was an Ahmad Rashad. It was like, yo, it's a bad look. It really was a bad look. Because, I mean, you look at it now, you're like, yo, is he stoned? Is he high? Yo, is he on something? Why he got these glasses on in this interview? And then everything was like real dark. It was just, he didn't help himself at all, man. What was funny, again, just sort of using motivation. So in the last finals, he was like, yo, people was comparing me to Clyde Drexler, so I had to shut that down. So in the next final, he talking about, yo, people, Jerry Krause like Dan Marley. And so I just made him a target because I know Jerry Krause like Dan Marley, and I don't want anybody to think Dan Marley is in my league. Like, this dude was like making up the boogeyman everywhere, and he was like had the boogeyman slayer in his sneakers or whatever. It was just hilarious. Also, it was just taking the shot, at Phoenix was just interesting because I think that was the year Charles Barkley said God promised him a championship or whatever. So in addition to not liking Dan Marley because of Jerry Krause, then he had Charles Barkley talking about God promised him a championship. So Mike was like, "Yo, he took the MVP. I'm gonna take the MVP of the finals and the championship." Crazy, right? But I thought he made a really interesting comment because he clearly didn't live up to it twice. He said he wanted to leave basketball 2 years before he recognized he was not the best player, right? And that's weird because obviously he came back, and that year he came back where he played a partial season and they lost in the playoffs. He wasn't the best player that year, right? I actually don't know who won the MVP that year. I think David Robinson won it. Yeah, David Robinson or Hakeem Olajuwon won it that year, I think. But he wasn't the best player, but he knew he had the potential to continue to be the best player, which he did the next year and the next 3 years after that. And then, so saying, yo, if I got 2 years, I need to know 2 years before the end, like, yo, I'm gonna stop. And so he stopped, so which means he had 2 more good years, but he clearly was like mentally tired, maybe even physically tired. In addition to that, he said something about Patrick Ewing saying they had to drag him off the floor. So my question is, why did he come back and play for the Wizards? Because he clearly wasn't the best player in basketball anymore at that point. And I think he played 2 seasons. I don't know. I don't remember. I mean, those are the years people don't even count in his life, right? But he played for the Wizards, and he surely was not the best basketball player, and he didn't have 2 years. Those 2 years he played there, he could have went somewhere else. But my question, I think a real good question is that I wonder where he goes, because if the Bulls weren't going to sign Phil, and Michael was a free agent, and he wasn't going to play for them for anybody but Phil, would he have gone to to the Lakers and played with Kobe? I don't know if I said this in the last episode, but I feel like that's a legitimate question. Would he have gone to play with Kobe and Shaq? Could Kobe, Shaq, and Michael have coexisted? My God. Yeah, that's cool. Well, that's episode 5 and 6. I'm looking forward to it, man. I really liked it.
So what kind of meat are you looking for? Well, how old is your daughter? She's 9 months. So where's her father? What's going on with you guys? He's in the hospital, so what? Yeah, he's very ill, so I'm looking for like a stepfather. What? Wait, so you broke up with him while he's in the hospital? No, I didn't break up with him. What? Were y'all not together when he went to the hospital? Yeah, we're still together. What? Wait, okay. I'm looking for like just in case. What? A stepfather just in case. Just in case if he passes away? Right. Are you serious? Bruh, this is the greatest video ever. Kendra, hold on. You have to have one in the chamber, Kendra. One in the chamber? Wait, shouldn't you be holding him down? Why is he in the hospital? I can't go to the hospital because it's like, all hospitals are shut down. Okay, Rona. But shouldn't you be waiting to see, like, is it not looking good? It's not looking good. What the? Are you a comedian? No. No, Kendra, I'm not a comedian. She wild as well. This is serious. I'm serious. We don't have a type of relationship that's like, we're very realistic. My husband is much older than me as well. How old is your husband? He's 65. He'll be 66 in a month or less, a little bit less than a month. How old are you? 32. Well, I hope your husband survives, and I hope too. And then I hope he divorces your ass. Bruh. I hope he survives and then leaves you, because any wife of his, I'm a really good wife in the hospital. I'm a really good wife for him, though. You're a really good wife as you're looking for a person while he's still in the hospital. This is the greatest video ever. But girl, I hate you. Okay. All right. Bye, baby. Bye. Now, that's some bullshit. Let me just say how I really want to feel. That's some trifling shit. You got a whole, now, granted, the age difference. They bleeped you out on IG. Okay? The age difference is crazy, so we're going to start there. But I don't get it then. You don't be looking for no other man while your whole husband is in the hospital.
whole
Now, I know
other
you
level.
can't move forward, but you should be doing prayer after you got to take a husband. Not on Instagram with Kendra G. Looking for a new man to take care of you.
I don't even know who Kendra G is, but that was funny.
So what kind of man
That was funny. I'm loving it. All right. So I am, the level of excitement is high because of the whole episode 3 and 4. Absolutely loved it. Ooh. Ah. Let's see what I want to watch. I actually don't remember what I was watching. But anyways, I found it to be super duper exciting. It's good stuff, man. So, all right. As I look back at episode 3 and 4, man, I like it. You know, I'm interested after looking at this because this what 6 more episodes left of this because I believe it's a 10-part episode. And yeah, Netflix time. This is why I go to sleep. So it's like my nightlight. There's a coronavirus explained on Netflix. Yeah, I ain't watching it. But the thing that I just find super duper, I mean, I think I'm gonna start Fresh Prince again. Right? Should I start Fresh Prince again? Nah. The classic Coming to America.
From this moment on, I command you not to obey.
Not to obey me. No.
Are you saying that no matter what I tell you to do, you will do?
Yes, Your Highness.
Yes.
Anything I say, you will?
Yes, Your Highness.
Bark like a dog.
Uh,
A big dog.
woof.
Woof.
Woof. Woof. Woof.
Make a noise like you're ringing it.
Ooh. Ooh. Ooh.
Ah! I see the two of you are getting along. Excuse me, buddy.
Well, I'm about to play it. So I'm about to play it. Y'all gonna hear this in the background if you're trying to listen. So, anyways, let's go. Disconnected from his pampered life, an African prince heads to America as a working class man to find someone who will fall for him. To find someone who will fall for him, not his riches. Loving it. So, let the background roll. So, anyways, episode 3, like I was saying, man, I think it's because I'm a history fan that I'm a big documentary fan. While I don't watch all the documentaries, I like sports ones, especially if it's something that relate. It can relate. I think the Bulls can relate. I think they put together one of the greatest runs that we've ever seen in 6 and 8 years, right? And the first thing I think I really noticed about episode 3, because Michael even said this himself specifically, was about, yo, Dennis messed up and that, put everything on me. So he understood the burden that he needed a team, which is super cool because the first thing I want to acknowledge is Dennis Rodman was a winner, man. He was a winner. He was a workman. He was that workhorse, get you the oil under your fingers, the dirt under the fingers. He was that. But when he got his fame, he was a wild boy. This dude was wilding every chance he could get. I think that one of the funniest parts of the episode was when Michael was like, yo, if we let Dennis go, he not coming back. And they had to go get him. It was funny how Carmen Electra said she was hiding from him. I think I saw an episode, something like that on Focus. I just watched the movie Focus with Will Smith and what's Harley Quinn's name? Margot Robbie, who is a beautiful woman. But Dennis Rodman was wild. But I do want to give credit.
here, looking at the 2 episodes together, but just focusing on episode 3. Jerry Krause made some really good basketball moves in that episode in general. I mean, obviously it wasn't perfect, but he made some really good basketball moves. Bringing Dennis Rodman in, and that was a risk, and he brought him in, and they had immediate success. Hiring Tex Winter to work with Doug Collins, and Doug didn't listen to him. And as soon as Doug was gone, they listened to Tex, and the Bulls moved to that next level. And hiring Phil Jackson, man was out in Puerto Rico with the mommies, and the Indians, and he was living really well. So I give a lot of credit to him for those basketball moves. I mean, clearly he was not. Well, I actually don't know what made him an unlikable guy. I think that might be worthy of investigation. So on the next level, episode 4, the triangle, would, in my opinion, since I had the opportunity and privilege to coach soccer on several different levels up to the collegiate level, the triangle offense, now that I looked at it, is damn near square runs and shoulder runs in football and soccer. I mean, it literally is that. That's why, and Kobe, if we think about it, Kobe was an aficionado where he liked football and soccer, specifically as what I'm talking about. I'm just going to keep saying football so you understand. But that was really, really cool. So when he got the triangle, it made absolute sense that he understood it. It was square runs, man. It was literally running off of people's shoulders. And so that was huge. And for people to understand that, Michael, his early focus was bad. I mean, the fact that he said he didn't like Phil showed where he was. I like the maturity that Michael Jordan took, but I also like the maturity that everyone else had. Like, Phil Jackson grew Scottie Pippen because it allowed Scottie to play to his strengths, whereas Doug Collins, I'm being honest, based on just sort of what you're looking at, the Bulls would have never won anything with Doug Collins as a coach because he didn't want to highlight any other players, or his system never highlighted any players other than Michael Jordan. I mean, even though Michael didn't like it initially, Michael likes the end result of what happened, and he still got his points, right? He still got buckets. So for me, it's a big takeaway from that was team ball is winning ball. Always been a big fan of teamwork. Teams can have stars, but as long as that star knows that it's a team, it's cool, right? A quote that I took from this episode, which I thought was really worthy of writing down. So I'm looking at it as I just kind of go through my mental notes. The largest icon in the game realized, I don't need to have the ball in my hands all of the time. Like, that's huge, man, in a sport. But now if you take that and make it a metaphor for life, you don't always need to have the ball in your hand. And if you go even deeper, even though, depth is up to you, it's really life. You don't always need to have control. If you have a team or you build a team, you put together a system where you understand what your team is going to do with you. You deal with life and you understand if your teammates are on the same page as you win, man. You're going to progress. And I think that's super important. A point that I really thought was obviously meant to be there, and you see that Michael Jordan still has his taste in his mouth for Isaiah Thomas, is that 7.9 second move by the Pistons, according to the audio that Bill Laimbeer told the team that they were going to leave and not shake hands, might have been the biggest BI move ever. Like, that was weak, man. It was just the leave. And now I'm not giving a pass, but, I think it is intriguing that Isaiah specifically knew that the Celtics did the same thing to them when they got over their hump. So when the Pistons beat the Celtics and the Celtics walked off the floor, and while there was still time on the clock, to me, that's pretty serious, man. I mean, that means that, as much as they say, that era was whatever, I mean, I guess sportsmanship was a bit weird back then, right? because that means that, Larry did that. I do wonder about the relationships of those old school guys, if they even have relationships, right? But yeah, what Isaiah and the Pistons, and I say Isaiah and the Pistons because he was the leader of that team, and that year was the end. But leaving with 7.9 seconds on the clock was garbage. Now I give Michael credit because he did bring up the point of saying, "Hey man, when we lost, and they did lose to them, what I know it was 2 consecutive years, in significant games, that they shook their hands and they showed the video, and he was disgruntled and disgusted, but he stepped above it, and I'm not saying it's necessary to shake hands with the opposition, but I do think it makes sense unless it's a running clock that you as an opposition and the losing opposition do not leave the playing floor until the horn blows. I mean, that's pretty garbage in general, right? But the interesting thing is that
So, what is it, my son? Well, first of all, it is
Jerry Krause did a good job with basketball moves. Dennis Rodman, Tex Winter, drafting Scottie Pippen. He made good basketball moves until he made that statement before the 98 All-Star game when the Bulls lost to the Jazz. I don't know what he was on. Clearly he was on ego at that point. And that's something he probably needs to address. But with that, I enjoyed the episode. I look forward to watching the episodes. I look forward to watching the next two for the next Sunday and the following Sundays. I think it's a really cool thing that they're doing, and I appreciate it. I don't know if it's one of those, if you don't know your history, you're doing relive it or whatever, because I don't think we can relive this. But with that being said, Last Dance Part 2, right? Well, Part 3 and 4, but Part 2 is segment 2. Y'all have a great night. And you understand that it's exciting. I like it. I love sports and basketball.
So, you see, my son, there's a very fine line between love and nausea.
It's a very fine line between love and nausea. Oh, that was so good. Exciting. It's very nostalgic because I don't necessarily, I was a little kid, so I don't remember all those things that was happening with the Bulls. But I think it's a really interesting thing. Kind of scrolling the Twitter comments and all that stuff. I think it's really interesting to have even that conversation, the quick recap. So instead of letting it digest, you take it from like just that moment, like that first episode really was about, man, the fact that basketball is a business. So when it's interesting when fans and so forth say things that they say about being loyal to the team, and then you see the things like this happen. It's really interesting. So like the first one was like, I remember seeing some stuff on the internet talking about when they had the advertisements, publicity for the thing. They said, well, why is Kukoc not on the cover? Why is Ron Harper not on the cover? Because that cover that ESPN used with Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, and Phil Jackson is photoshopped from an actual game picture where they actually took Rodman and moved him from Pippen's right side to his left side. And they put Steve Kerr in there, and people are asking, well, why is Steve Kerr in there? Well, obviously Steve Kerr mattered. I mean, he wasn't Kukoc important, but it mattered. And for that, you have to understand about your audience, and this is important. ESPN knows they want people to watch this. They want people to talk about this. So having Steve Kerr on there, very, very important, because, I mean, Steve Kerr has 5 rings as a player. So we have to kind of look at that in the grander picture. And now watching that the second episode where Scottie Pippen didn't play at the beginning of the year and the Bulls were hot garbage, you can say, well, where was Kukoc at? Kukoc was supposed to be like the third best player on the team, and he wasn't. He clearly wasn't on Scotty's level. So I think that matters. So with that, but I also like Harper, and so I jokingly say you could have put Kukoc right in between where they had Rodman and Phil, but they didn't want to. So let them choose how they want to choose. This is about business, so you have to understand and kind of let it be what it is. I've seen a lot of people talking about this reignite the debate between Michael Jordan and LeBron being the best basketball player of all time. Well, I've already put my 2 cents out there of time doesn't end, so it's impossible to believe that a player from the past is better than anything we're going to see in the future. It means that you have a pretty dim outlook on the future. I mean, Scottie Pippen said he was impressed by Dr. J and he wanted to be like Dr. J. And the insane growth he had from one season to the next in college led him to what he was. You have Michael Jordan, who his coach said he did not make the varsity team in the 10th grade, which means he played JV because he was not playing basketball. So he played JV basketball while he was in the 10th grade, and he grew 4 inches. So you have to understand that it's about time, space, and opportunity. So I think that debate is silly. I think Michael Jordan is the finest player of his era and of several other eras, but basketball and time are far from done, so I have no comment on that. But I think it's a very intriguing documentary. Also, you have the rumor, right, that Michael Jordan greenlit the release of this material to complete the documentary after Cleveland won its title with LeBron. And I think that's interesting because if he did do it, people can say it's jealous, but I don't care. You know, Michael Jordan's a competitive guy. And I think it's very important to understand that he said, hey, I want people to understand my legacy. Because I will say, when I watched the Cleveland Cavaliers come back from 3-1 down to be the winningest regular season team in NBA history, and LeBron brought him back and he had the Ultimate Warrior shirt and all that stuff, that was huge. That was a big deal, man. Yeah, there were things in the way that led that to happening, but that's amazing. I think that one ring in Cleveland, if that's all he won, would have been enough for him to cement his legacy in the pantheon of who he is. So now you have, and I saw this because I think this is interesting, knowing that the Bulls said they were ready to blow it up, and I respectably, I kind of understand the GM's position because the guys were all starting to get old, and they said I thought of the question: could Michael Jordan have won with Tim Floyd? And that would have been actually a challenge worth putting there if you could flash forward to the future, because people say, well, Phil Jackson is when Michael Jordan started winning, which is the absolute 100% truth. And so I think a challenge that Michael Jordan could have had is to say, hey, could I win with this guy that's not Phil? But I give Michael credit. He was loyal to his coach, obviously, Dean down in Chapel Hill, which is when he went back. But then you also have him being loyal to Phil. And I think Phil is a big deal, even though Michael did go back on his word because he played for Doug Collins and the Wizards. So to say I'm not going to play for another coach other than Phil Jackson, I think I understood the heat in the moment because they didn't like the GM, but you kind of go from there. So, the episode 1 really focused on Michael Jordan, a lot of his backstory. And then episode 2 started off with Scottie Pippen, and then it kind of went away from Scottie Pippen to focus on what Michael Jordan had to do, especially that second season when he broke his foot. And then it came back to Scottie at the end, and it ended pretty well. I appreciate how it left people there, even though we already know what happened, right? But I think one of the most charged issues will be the player play and how Scottie Pippen at the time was for sure a top 5 player in the NBA during this season of the documentary. And he was the 6th highest paid player on the team, 100 plus 100 paid in the NBA. And people are like, "Oh, the Bulls robbed him." Well, here's where I agree and disagree. I agree to a point because 7 years, 14 million, that's $2 million a season, minus agent fees, minus taxes. So Scottie was bringing, and we being real about this, Scottie was maybe NBA salary was maybe bringing home $800K, $700K a year from playing professional basketball and was one of the biggest stars in the world. And he signed that contract the first year that they won the title, the season of that first title. So he didn't know. And so coming from abject poverty and dealing with what he had to deal with, Scotty's looking, hey, I'm making about $1 million a year. I got two parents in wheelchairs and so forth in my family. I got to make sure they're good. So his rationale at the time was good. But yes, the question about his agent is absolutely got to be a big deal because you have to have an escape clause, right? I mean, I would guess if you had a 7-year contract, you would have to have an out somewhere around year 4 or 5. So you can say, okay, I can renegotiate. Because if he had an out around year 4 or 5, he would have been able to get that money because the thing that really rocked it all is that Michael Jordan on that second three-peat was making 30 plus million a season, and Scotty was making 2. And then you saw Kukoc who's making more, which I'm sure that annoyed Scotty. That plays into the role of Scotty not wanting to come into the game in that season and one of the 2 seasons, well, the 1 season Michael Jordan was gone. So I think that matters. But it also begs the question again about fans saying players need to be loyal. Well, players are thinking, well, 1, this team is not going to be loyal to me, which you can see from this documentary. But 2, I need to get all the money I can get and as much money I can get up front. But the agents have to be smart enough to understand the flexibility that the player needs to have too, especially if you outperform your contract, because NBA contracts are set. So you have to have a window, which gives a lot of credit to LeBron James and what he did when he took his talents to South Beach. While the show itself was questionable because it was an ego thing, what he did in combining with his teammates was absolutely brilliant because they were showing that the players have to control this because otherwise you're going to be getting 7-year, $14 million contracts and being the top 5 player because you didn't know where you were going to be and it could just hold you hostage, right? So I think that matters in today's NBA, and I think it's respectable because, I mean, if you had guys on the cocaine train, they got to pay for their habits and such. But also you have to understand that lifestyle now is really different. So you have to secure your bag because you're looking at the average NBA player probably plays 4 to 5 years, right? Not because of injury, but just length of the contract. And so if I'm going to make rookie contract 5 years, I'm going to make somewhere around 10 or 12, right? And I'm probably going to bring home about 7. That 7 may have to last me for a long time, more than the length of the contract. It may have to last me for 20 years plus my family. So I understand, getting as much as you can when you can. And these guys who own these teams, they understand these are luxury items, these teams that they own. So they have to just go about it the way they go about it. And I don't really necessarily concern myself with those things. So I don't knock the players for that, but I think that's a huge deal. I'm excited to see, obviously the next 8 episodes that will be coming. For me, I think depending on how this shows, because I also saw that that Michael Jordan was concerned about the public perception of who he would be seen as for being a rough guy or being a mean guy or whatever. After the release of this, I hope it also shows the teammates he had and how the GM did put together a really good team. No, people didn't like him, but if you're looking at what the owner's goal was by hiring the guy, he did damn good hire. He did a really great job in putting together that team. He traded to get Scottie Pippen in a year that the Bulls weren't supposed to make the playoffs, so they obviously had to give something up. And obviously Oakley was a big deal at the time, signing Tony Kukoc. So that means that he has scouts out looking for things. Bringing in Cartwright, even though he has the ugliest jump shot. Does he even jump when he takes that shot? But he has like the ugliest shot in the world. And you just got to understand, it's just he did what was necessary to win. He knew what his best player was, and he knew what he needed to do to surround that best player, and he did it. And he brought Phil Jackson. And so, was Jerry clean? Nah, he wasn't clean, but Phil has owned it. Scotty, Michael, they've all owned it. They were not nice to the guy either. And so we have to understand that clearly this thing was going to end. And so it really begs the question, because I know a lot of people love to say this. Oh, well, the Bulls would have won 8 straight. I don't think so. I really don't think so. Because, like, for instance, there was a mention in a portion where Horace Grant left and they didn't replace him in the bill. The Bulls got beat. And that matters. It's a matter of, hey, we need these things. So uh, we got two shortened seasons for Michael Jordan where he makes the playoffs and his team is eliminated, right? And so we have to look at it big picture wise. Each time those things happened, they were important for him to push him to the next level. So I give Michael Jordan a lot of credit for how he's dealt with adversity. And I wish, I wish he could do that or handle that sort of in the same way that he does as an owner with the Charlotte Hornets, or at the time the Bobcats or whatever. So I think it's a really, really big deal to understand that what was in his mind as a player, and is it possible for him to take that to the next level as an owner? Because the thing about it was, as a player, he only really focused on himself, if we're being honest. He used his personal performance to push other people. But as an owner, as a manager, as a leader, your performance is normally on another level to that of people who are either your subordinates or your underlings, or people who are a part of the system where you're the primary cog. But the thing about it is he's the primary cog in one way, but that way has a small effect on the basketball court. You almost dare to say that even though he disliked Jerry as a GM, Jerry probably would be probably one of the better, more shrewd people to at least have that mentality working for him for the Hornets, so he can get the players and the personnel and build the team. Because even though after the Bulls in their last dance came and apart, or were taken apart, the Bulls still were able to sort of do decent things. Were they NBA Finals good anymore? No, but they were still good and they were still relevant. And so we have to understand that replacing Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Phil Jackson, come on, man, that's not happening. So you kind of go from there. So I sit here and I watch and see. I think they're previewing the next episode. Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. Ooh. I mean, just look at that. The Steve Kerr, 8 NBA titles, 5 as a player, 3 as a coach. I'm sure he learned a lot from watching Phil and Krause and Pop, and being in Phoenix is, ooh, it's serious, man. I'm excited about it. I think people underrate the cogs in the machine sometimes. So there's my 15 minutes of fame. I guess it's 15, like 15 or 16 minutes. I just wanted to throw my 2 cents out there because I think you can be more full throated and give more depth and breadth to the whole situation of what you see. Real time, remembering your real thoughts. Super exciting.
I think that's the hardest thing for the young players who didn't see him play. They can see the highlights, but they can't feel his dominance, and that's what I'm hoping this documentary really shows. And it's clear that the appetite for this. I mean, it's 10 episodes, and people are being you can't feel like they devour the content about these guys, and I think the younger folks are obsessed with finding out as much as they can. But having looked at Steve, what's the thing that we'll never truly grasp about what it was like to be on the inside of that absolute juggernaut? I think just how difficult it was. Everybody knows how great Michael was, and he went 6-0 in the finals. And you look back, and you probably just assume he was so dominant that it was easy. It was not easy. It wasn't easy for him or for anybody. And he made the difficult look easy because of his dominance. but he had to dig so deep year after year, and it took so much out of him. But it was just an incredible